Anina kena Davin Dumas Nikas Kawi Kwendonga Kendonji. I want to say thank you to our elder knowledge keeper for opening our session today, and I greet all of you today. And want to just say a great job to the ladies who presented before me. Interesting, really interesting stuff. Of course, Melanie with the progress of her organization and their achievements to date, as well as Cheryl there with her land base. I'm a big advocate of land base and supporting of land based activities and reconnecting with the land and so forth. So it's great. So I do have a PowerPoint that I will share. Again, as Simon had mentioned, I'm the Director of Languages and Cultures at the MFNERC, Manitoba First Nations Education Resource Center. So we're located, our primary location is in Winnipeg. Our administration offices, our head office is in Swan Lake First Nation. But so I was asked to do a presentation today to the Northern Group. So essentially what I'm going to be doing today is giving an overview of MFNERC, some of the services we provide, and more specifically, some of the languages and cultures activities, partnerships, and initiatives that we have within our organization with our member First Nations. So I'll give you a little brief rundown of our organization and some of the facts about our organization, and we'll see how it goes. So again, the purpose is to give an overview of MFNERC, some of the services that we provide, languages and cultures, and some of the language and culture supports. So our vision is to develop and implement comprehensive, holistic educational system inclusive of First Nation languages, worldviews, values, beliefs, and traditions, with exemplary academic standards under First Nations jurisdiction. And our mission is to improve education for all learners to achieve in my Anishinaabe languages, Minopimatizuan, or living a good life. So our organization, we're in this 22nd year of operation. The creation of our organization was mandated by the Manitoba Chiefs and Assembly. So it was our Chiefs and Assembly that mandated the creation of the MFNERC, which in turn started off small with a few staff and has grown significantly over the years. I know what Melanie was talking about in her presentation when we talk about layers of the political layers. So our organization is governed by a board of directors, which consists of a representative chief from the north and the south, as well as a chief from the participating school system, First Nations, as well as education directors, representatives of the north, south, and of the school system. So that makes the compilation of our board of directors. Our corporate members, though, are the Executive Council of Chiefs. So out of the 63 First Nations, we have an Executive Council of Chiefs, which are made up, I believe, of 22 chiefs. So there are the main membership that oversee, I guess, the mandates for our organization. And in total, we provide services to 39 First Nations and 43 schools, just right around, probably a little bit more now, a little over 12,000 students going to school on reserve. So it's quite a few students. So when I talk about our services, we have different departments. So our organization is in different departments. Like I mentioned, I oversee the Department of Languages and Cultures, but I just want to briefly bring up some of the other departments. So one of our departments is the Manitoba First Nations School System, MFNSS. So the MFNSS, out of those previous numbers that I had mentioned, they oversee 11 First Nations, 11 schools with over 2,200 students. So they're essentially a school division. They provide school division services to those communities, and they're finishing their 5th year of the agreements. So they had signed 5-year agreements with the communities that are involved, and they're in the process right now of renewing those agreements for another 5 years. And actually, our executive director and the team are out in the community doing a signing today. So another signing with a community for 5 years. So it's good news. And we do have some other communities who are not members, who are not part of the school system, that are looking to join the MFNSS from provincial school systems. So out of all of our schools, we actually have 17 First Nations that are with provincial school systems. So we don't provide them any services, but some of those are starting to look at this system as a possibility to join. And I guess one of the big differences between the MFNSS and a public school division is that it's the community that drives the direction of education. So with a school division, you have the big school division, and it's a top-down approach where they kind of tell the schools and administrators and teachers what to teach, when to teach, where to teach. It's the opposite. So it comes from the schools, from the grassroots level, in consultation with MFNSS staff in the direction of the school. So it's a complete opposite. And part of that is the local chief and council will sign a delegation agreement delegating their authority over running education to the MFNSS, as well as an education governance agreement that allows for the direct flow of funding to MFNERC. So all of the education funding for those communities for the school comes to MFNERC, and MFNSS provides support services. They look after all the human resources for those schools. So it kind of takes some things off the plate of the smaller First Nations, where they're not worrying about recruitment and trying to do this and that. So the HR services will look after that on their behalf. Finance, all the financial administration and everything is all handled from the MFNERC, and everybody's set up, with one agreement and consistent pay scales and all that kind of stuff that may have not been there in the past. So it really works. It really works well. And the one thing I will say that's a big difference from the MFNSS to a traditional school division or a provincial school division is that it's not run like a business. So monies that are allocated for a First Nation will go to those First Nations. They're not going to rob from this one to fix this thing and so forth like school divisions do. So they run it like a business, and that's different. It's a different way of doing it. So and that's a big piece. So a lot of it, I think, a lot of information from that system would be really relevant to Melanie and what she's putting together in the Yukon. So I wanted to outline that a little bit. And again, the school system staff have a whole one-day presentation that they can do on the school system and the overall process. So that's something, Melanie, I know I can make that connection if you would, or anybody else who's listening in. We can definitely look to getting some presentations for you from that department. One of the other departments we have is the training initiatives department. So they look after a wide range of training initiatives. One of the recent ones that there was a whole bunch of clinician training that was completed. We had 8 First Nation school psychologists that graduated. So they're fully certified school psychologists. 12 speech and language pathologists, First Nations, Manitoba First Nations speech and language pathologists. There was occupational therapists, deaf and hard of hearing clinicians, physiotherapists. So they've had a whole bunch of cohorts that have just ended. Now we have a whole bunch of clinicians, First Nation clinicians, as part of our organization as well. And I'll outline a little bit of that. About 3 years ago, we ran the training initiatives ran a program called RISE, Resource Teacher Training Program, which was actually a post-bac degree in special education. And I believe we had 70 graduates in that program. So in Manitoba here, someplace, there are 70 certified resource teachers, First Nations resource teachers. We are constantly running education assistant programs that are usually done as cohorts within the community at the community level. Our schools are always in need of education assistance, especially once Jordan's principal funding became available. There was additional fundings to hire education assistant support for our children. So there was a lot of training sessions that were happening there. One of the other departments we have is the Technology Services Department. As part of that department, we actually have the Wapusqua Virtual Collegiate. So what Wapusqua Virtual Collegiate is a complete online high school. So it has a full complement of courses from grade 9 to 12. They've actually I think it's 2 years now, they're actually recognized as their own school and have their own school number registered with the province of Manitoba. And they offer remote learning for our member communities. And like I said, they have all the subjects in grade 9 to 12. So it's been in development and in operation for, I believe, close to 10 years now. I don't think there's anybody who has a program that comes close to the level of this online collegiate. I know the province of Manitoba is changing their format to what ours is, using the same programs now. So they're knocking on the door saying, "Hey, do you have courses that you can sell us?" And so they're trying to cut the corner, but we'll work with them and see what we can do. We also have the digital learning environment. As a result of the pandemic, there was a big uptake into having meetings, conferences, gatherings online. So digital learning environment, the DLE team was established to start helping in coordinating all of those digital environment needs that we had as an organization, that our communities had in facilitating at-home learning, gatherings, and so forth. So that team has been working on a number of big gatherings. So each year we actually host 2 big conferences, one in May, which is Lighting the Fire, and one which is in November, which is a Circle of Knowledge. Our Lighting the Fire is usually the bigger one. We usually have, normal, and I'll say normal pre-pandemic times, we'd have over 1,000 participants attend the conference here in Winnipeg, usually from not only Manitoba, but Saskatchewan and Northern Ontario. So those gatherings were quite successful and huge. I think that one year they actually had over 1,200 participants. So it was very successful. Besides that, we offer a lot of IT support to our staff internally, but also to the schools by replenishing technology, servers. One of the new areas we're starting to support some of our isolated communities is with Starlink Internet, and it's a game changer for the communities that have been able to get it. Going from whatever's been available to the Starlink is night and day for connectivity. So that's opening up a lot of doorways too. And then, of course, the implementation and maintenance and training for our student information system. And the one that we're using is called DataVan. The next department we have is the Inclusive Education Services Department. So Inclusive Ed looks after a wide range of clinical service in a whole bunch of disciplines: psychology, speech and language pathology, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, deaf, hard of hearing, mental wellness. And they also provide support for resource teachers in the communities. So they have, I believe it's over 80 staff in that department that are on the go traveling. I've heard numbers, 16,000 trips within 2 weeks. to communities by their clinicians, just on the go steady. So I know Melanie had mentioned in her presentation about how they almost don't need an office because they're always on the go. They're always on the go in communities and working directly with children. And then within inclusive education services, there is the Jordan's Principle supports. And those supports are, they're a smaller piece, but those are actually provided to all of the Manitoba First Nations. So they have a little piece in there where they provide supports. And one of those is the rehabilitation assistance training program right now that's happening. So that one was open to all First Nations. And each First Nation was allowed 2 people to participate. So I believe they had just over 100 participants in that training program. And then the next one, and I'm going to show you a very short video, because I know we're short on time, but this is new. This is not even public, but I'll share it with for this presentation. So that was just a little video about a new little promo video for our Languages and Cultures department. Again, so the last department is the department that I oversee, which is our Languages and Cultures department. And it's quite a diverse department in the services that we provide. So I'll go through some of those, and if there's any questions, we'll definitely get to those at the end. But part of our department is providing those in-school community support services. So we do have a number of facilitators who travel to communities and provide supports in numeracy, literacy, science, First Nation studies, physical education and health, land-based education, school administration support, and First Nation language support. So our department is roughly 67 staff who are in a bunch of different capacities and job titles. And again, one piece is that in-school community supports. The other part is the instructional resource development piece. And in there we have our number of staff are working on resources to support the teaching of languages and cultures. So they're writing posters, they're writing books, creating posters, worksheets, workbooks, all kinds of great things that teachers can use to teach about language or teach languages, teach in the languages, teach culture, and so forth. One of the things that happened when the pandemic first started was we've seen all of our schools, and I'm sure you guys experienced this in your areas as well, is that schools shut down. The pandemic caused schools to shut down, and our communities were forced to do at-home learning. And, it was difficult. It was difficult for our teachers. So our staff began the process of creating what we call the essential learning packages as supports for our member communities. So essentially what those were biweekly packages at every grade level for the whole year. So we now have a bank of resources that were created by our staff that our member communities request a login, and they can log in, and if they teach grade 2, they click grade 2, and they got a whole year's worth of biweekly packages that are ready to print all gone through our publishing services, so they're all nice and neat and clean. A lot of it is First Nation content, materials to support languages, to support culture, but as well as the academic areas of language arts and math and science and so forth. So that was a tremendous accomplishment and a lot of work on behalf of our staff to create those packages. And a lot of our communities had a difficult time. They were completely isolated in lockdown. They couldn't get packages prepared. So what we did is, even in some instances, we printed them off and put them on a plane and sent out a box of packages that they could have delivered to their students. So, we tried to support any way we could that way. So those are still there. And again, we, keep reminding them that those packages are there should they need them. And I know some of the schools that are having a hard time recruiting teachers and have vacancies are using some of those packages, for the sub to utilize in providing at least some type of programming for children in the different grades. Another part of our department is publishing services. So we do have a publishing unit as part of our department. We have editors, we have graphic designers, we have videographers, we have people who do our social media, we have printing. So books, we print a lot of books in-house, posters, so on and so forth. All the editing is done in-house. So we have a procedure and a way for our staff to submit resources to be developed. I know we have probably 150 on average projects on the go at once within publishing, being published at various stages. And it's and again, those are available on our website. If you go to our mfnerc.com website, we have a shop and our resources are available there. Books, posters, and there's going to be a lot more that's going to be coming available. Some of our major activities, some are new, but some are ongoing. Our organization has provided a number of activities ongoing throughout the years. And as you know, there are trends in education, but some things are really good, really relevant in the time, and they kind of fade out and something else comes in its place. And we try to keep, on top of those developments and ensure that our staff are up to date and can provide supports for those types of trends in education as well. But some of our major activities is professional development. So we provide all kinds of professional development for teachers, for principals, for directors of education. We work with school and community education planning. We have facilitators who can do a path process with a community wanting to refocus their education plans for their school. And one of the new things that we're helping is with developing community education plans. We do know of some communities that have developed 10 and 20-year education plans for their communities. So we want to extend that help to other communities. We host an annual land-based youth gathering. So we do have, I believe there's about 22 schools now that have land-based programs. What we do is we bring those schools together in different communities. It rotates, it goes around. Each of the communities take turns hosting the event. And we provide support for the host community, and they plan a whole bunch of land-based activities, whether that's snaring rabbits, competing in different games. But the unique piece of those games, when we established those probably 12 years ago, was that it's not my school against your school. When the children get there, the teams are made up of one student from each school. So essentially the teams become a whole group of students that don't know each other. So part of it is team building, part of it is getting to know each other, and in the spirit of friendly competition. So we don't want to create rivalries between communities. We want to create students coming together and learning from each other with their skills. So that's one unique piece of that. And we also provide workshops, demonstrations from knowledge keepers on some of the unique skills with hunting, trapping, skinning. You know, I know we've done fish filleting and things like that too. So all these skills that a lot of the children are no longer exposed to, but one day may very well need. So we want to ensure that we're passing those on. We do provide supports for hosting a regional science fair here in Winnipeg, where we bring a bunch of children in who have competed locally at their schools. And we also provide supports in having some of our projects go to the National Science Fair, wherever it's hosted throughout Canada. One of the newer things is we're going to be supporting the Interschool Powwow. So the Interschool Powwow is exactly what it is. It's a powwow where we bring our member schools together who have dancers, and they can dance in the spirit of dance and share their skills and show off their talents and have a good time and learning and giving that opportunity for learning about the protocols for each of the dances and for the protocols with powwow. So it's run like a full what you would call a regular powwow with an MC, arena directors, and everything. So it's a great learning experience for them so that they have that opportunity. So they don't feel intimidated when they do go to a powwow that's happening in another community throughout the summer. If they do decide to follow powwow trail, they have an understanding of protocols. Some of our current projects that we have in progress and the big one that we have, and it's been in progress for a while, is the First Nations Education Framework. So the First Nations Education Framework was actually called the First Nations Curriculum Framework, but we changed it. So what this document is going to be a foundational document for the development of a First Nations education program. Not contrary to, but I guess in not to replace, but the provincial curriculum. But the whole premise of this document is to tell our stories from our First Nations perspective and worldviews, and to correct some of the history that's being mistaught in mainstream education. The big piece is our pre-colonial history, establishing the systems and bringing forward all those good things that we had. As you are well aware, a lot of our history or what's in history and being taught in history right now, we only exist from the time Europeans landed on our shores, is when we kind of showed up out of the bush. But that's not true. We have a long millennia of history prior to European contact. But also looking at how European contact changed our original, our original or traditional ways of thinking, knowing, and doing, and how their prolonged stay here on Turtle Island has even changed that more. And it's basically broken into four eras: the pre-European contact, and then the initial European contact, the assimilative policies piece, and then the current time period and moving forward, and reflecting back to how that has changed our people in the way we think, know, and do is important for our children to understand, because a lot of our children think this is the way we always were, and this wasn't, right? There were things that influenced us to change, and how we've always had people who have resisted that change. And that's why we still have our languages, and that's why we still have our traditional practices and our ceremonies, because of those people who resisted that change. So it's important, and again, like I said, this framework is going to be the foundation for the development of a full education program that can be implemented in our communities. Part of that is the last bullet there, community histories, incorporating community histories. So each community has a bit of a unique history in where their territory or original territory was, and how they came to be where they are. One of the other things we're working on is, and we're calling it a residential schools guide right now, but it probably won't be called that. but it's developing a program so that our teachers have materials to teach about residential schools, about genocide, that are age appropriate materials. There are some out there that are created, so we're not going to recreate the wheel. We're going to bring those in as reference resources, but filling in the gaps where we need to, because our children are hearing about the discovery of the unmarked graves of children, the Orange T-shirt day, and they want to know. And to be honest, a lot of our teachers are not prepared to talk about it. Some of them are non-First Nation, so they need materials in order to support them teaching children about that in a good way, in a way that's age appropriate. Our knowledge keepers always tell us, tell the truth to the children, but tell it gently, and that's what we want to do. So that's a big part of that work is telling that truth gently. We're in the process of creating a model, a First Nations model of lead teacher development. Again, it's probably not going to end up being called that. It's probably going to change once it's finished being developed. But essentially, what we want to do is build capacity at the community level where they won't necessarily need our services. So we're kind of working ourselves out of a job, in a sense, but at the same time, it's giving back that ability to our communities to do those jobs and build that capacity and so that they can support each other within the community and not have to wait until one of our staff can make it out there. So it's a big turn in some of the work that we've been doing, but it's a good piece. One of the other projects is a grassroots role model and honoring elders project. So we put a call out for communities to identify an elder and a role model from their community that they would like to showcase, or not, I shouldn't say showcase, but bring forward as a representative of their community. From there, we'll develop a book and posters of these individuals that will be shared with all of our member communities. And again, this graphic just kind of shows our 4 pillars for languages and culture services. And I talked a little bit about a number of these already, but just a higher level instructional resource development, capacity building, in-school supports, and community-based planning and development are basically the 4 pillars. One of the big changes, I guess, that our organization has gone through in the last couple of years is changing that focus to grounding everything in languages and cultures. For many years, our teachers, directors have said we need to ground our work in languages and cultures, and it's been difficult to do that. As an organization that's federally funded, the government doesn't like to see those kinds of words, language and culture and so forth. So with the change in the way funding is flowed, now we're able to do those kinds of things and do things our way that we know will work for our First Nations and our children. So we're really looking forward to the next little while as we start getting back to providing direct services, in-person services. I think the Zoom platform and Teams platform is great, but it's not the same as working in person and being able to have those really strong, meaningful dialogues and collaboration. So